Madera Companies, welcome back to Touch Base. We're going to continue this discussion with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've been kind of walking through this semester or this fall season, and I hope that you remember that while diversity, equity, and inclusion do include things like race and gender, it's so much more than that. The last episode, we kind of talked through just the simplicity of how we even run inclusive meetings. And so as we walk through this, I want to give you another topic, something that we think is important, something that not only impacts our world and our culture around us, it is impacting the workplace each and every day, and that is this conversation of generational diversity. Did you know for the first time, maybe ever, as far as our statistics go, in the history of this country, we have 5 generations working alongside one another in today's workforce. 5 generations are coming together to work towards whatever this company or whatever this group of people is trying to achieve. In our own company, we have an age span of 2 people who are 75 years old going all the way down to a part-timer who is 17 in the Madera Companies. This is the age span that we're talking about within our own companies. And so generational diversity is a huge piece of not just who we are, but it really goes to what it means to be a successful company, what it means to be a successful group of people and organization. How do we build this in or recognize this as important and then continue to build a healthy culture for all ages? I think the first place is with education. Education is key. Understanding who the different generations are and what major events have shaped them are important for us as we begin to know the context of the people that we work with and with the people who we give products to and provide services for. It's important, and I want to say this really clearly here at the beginning, it's important for us to understand that every generation has developed their worldview in relationship to the world they grew up in. I want to repeat this one more time just so you catch this, because this is huge. It lays the foundation for what I'm going to talk about for the next little bit, but it also lays the foundation for how we engage each other in a lot of ways. It's important for each of us to understand that every generation has developed their worldview in relationship to the world they grew up in. And the world that I grew up in is not the same world that my parents grew up in. It's not the same world that some of you grew up in. It's not the same world that my kids are growing up in. So let's take a look at what we know about the various generations that are impacting us on a daily basis. I'm going to name them off, give you some age and year estimates as far as like when these generations kind of came along, and then kind of talk through what we know about them in a general way. The first group I'm going to talk about is the GI generation, which is also in some cases called the greatest generation. This is a group of people who were born between the years of 1901 and 1924, relatively. Then you've got the silent generation, many of who are actually still in the workforce, whether you know it or not. The silent generation is also kind of known as the traditionalists. Generally speaking, they were born between the years of 1925, 1945, between those years. We've got the baby boomers who were born between the years of 1946 and 1964. We have Gen X, which is my generation, but born between the ages of 1965 and 1981. We have millennials, born between the ages of 1981 and 1999. We have iGen or Gen Z, which as many of us know, Generation Z, born between the years of like 2000 and 2012. Some estimates go back as far as like 98 to like 2013, but somewhere kind of right in there. And then we have Generation Alpha, which is the latest generation, and they are born between the ages of like 2013 and today. And these are all of the generations that are coming together on a regular basis to create our societies across the world. Now, I want to walk through a few things about each one of these generations, just because I think it gives us a little bit of a context and some helpful information to kind of understand why certain generations see the world that they do. So let me give you a few thoughts on the GI generation. I know all of them are retired, or at least almost all of them are retired, and many of them have even passed away. But their generation is still impacting many of the things that are going on today. This is a generation that in a lot of ways was shaped tremendously by World War I, the Great Depression. They were a huge group devoted to military service. They had a strong sense of duty and patriotism and work ethic. Here's where they're still impacting us each and every day in ways we don't even know. They helped build our society when it comes to infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals, all of those types of things. They are known as being a people driven to survive based upon all the things that they had to go through. And interestingly enough, they were very reluctant to take on debt. And so they passed that type of value on to their kids. Now let's move to the next generation, a group that is still working in the workforce today. They are the silent generation, also known, like I said a minute ago, as the traditionalists. Born again between 1925 and 1945, kind of in that era. They are a group of people who they went through the Great Depression as well, many of them as kids. They saw World War II and participated in World War II. They fought in it. They fought in the Korean War. They fought in the Vietnam War. They saw a world in a lot of ways that was very violent and trying to figure out who would own what in which territories. They are known for their loyalty, their patriotism, much like the previous generation. But one of the things that they did, and one of the things that they still do, is they put duty before pleasure. They put their responsibilities before pleasure, and they're known for their steadiness. The silent generation has a strong work ethic. They have a strong respect for authority. And they kind of have a McCarthy era feel to them as far as how they do things. And many felt it unwise to speak out. And so that's kind of how they got their name, became the silent generation. They went along and they did their duty before engaging in pleasure and all of the other things. But this generation is who formed the leadership for the civil rights movement. And so they weren't just silent, they also participated in a lot of things that were huge, things that changed our country in some of the best ways. They emphasized stewardship, the willingness to take care of our resources, and again, they were also, much like the previous generation, because of what they had seen, they were reluctant to take on debt. Now we move to the baby boomers. This is a generation, again, born between 1946 and 1964. We have a lot of boomers who are still working in the workforce today. Many of them are the CEOs. Many of them are the C-suites. Many of them are big people in their companies. They are, in a lot of ways, the most powerful generation in our country today. But they saw some crazy things happen in their world view too. Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. You've got Rosa Parks and her stand against racism in 1955. They witnessed the first nuclear power plant in 1957. The Civil Rights Act is passed in 1957. John F. Kennedy is elected in 1960. The Peace Corps gets going in 1961. There's the Cuban Missile Crisis in 62. MLK, Martin Luther King, and all of those standing up for equal rights and standing up against racism. They march on Washington, D.C. in 1963. Ground troops invade Vietnam in 65. And then in 1968, both Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy are assassinated. And then they saw Woodstock in 1969. If you look at the characteristics and a lot of the values that come out of the baby boomer generation, they, much like their parents, because of what they came out of with not having things and life being kind of up and down and unsure, baby boomers, generally speaking, they live to work. They have a general sense of optimism about the future. They have unprecedented influence in our society, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier when I say they are the most powerful generation in our country today. They are willing to go into debt in order to achieve the goals and the things that they believe in. They're teamwork and process oriented, and they are involved in lots of things. They're on boards for nonprofits and community advocate services across the nation. This group is huge in building and doing great things. Now I want to talk about Generation X. This is, again, like I said, this is my generation, 1965 to 1981. And just in case you're wondering, I was not born in 1965. I was actually born in 1981, just to make sure that you kind of know that. Our generation is known by and has experienced some crazy things as well. The women's liberation demonstrations took place in 1970. This was huge. You had the Munich terrorism issue that took place in 1972. Watergate takes place in 73. There's an energy crisis in 73. Jonestown and all of the crazy associated with that takes place in 1978. There was massive layoffs that hit our country in 1979. We see Ronald Reagan elected in 80. The Challenger explodes in 1985. I will never forget that. I saw that live. I watched that live as we watched that spaceship explode. The stock market crashes in 1987. The fall of the Berlin Wall comes in 1989, and I will never forget watching TV and seeing missiles just hit Baghdad as Operation Desert Storm takes off in 1991. These were huge markers in our childhood and the things that kind of helped us grow up. Gen X, the characteristics and the values, a lot of the things that are important to us, and again, that is a very general statement, but unlike the boomers, we don't live to work, we work to live. Our jobs are viewed in the context of a contract. Like, we want to be able to have great jobs, but we don't want to be defined by the job. We want more than that. We want clear expectations when it comes to relationships and things in the workplace. Gen Xers, they want the opportunity to grow and to lead. They want to contribute to the whole, because contributing to the whole into something bigger is important. But back to working to live rather than living to work, versatility in a lot of ways for the Gen X generation means security. Versatility is huge, being able to pick up and go. Gen Xers think globally. They are technologically literate, okay? Our generation saw the internet come out. Our generation saw the internet become something huge and kind of take off early. We value self-reliance, wanting, again, versatility means security. We work to live, but there's this self-reliance that I want to be in charge of my own journey. And we're very pragmatic. The next generation is the millennials, born between the years of 1982 and 1999, give or take a couple, 2 or 3 years there. But some of the things that were very impactful upon the millennial generation is that they grew up in families that were extremely child-focused. If you've ever heard of the phrase helicopter generation, that's where this took off. Because those who were raising millennials, many of those parents were helicopter parents who were always around their kid trying to keep them safe. And if you think about some of the insecurity and the uncertainties of past world experiences, you can see why parents parented the millennials this way. But they witnessed things like the Oklahoma City bombing. These are the children of 9/11, all of the crazy stuff and the hurtfulness and the fear that surrounded September 11th. This is the generation who saw Columbine and school shootings become a normal part of their journey. They saw the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. These are the children who grew up watching the Bill Clinton scandal and the way in which he abused power over Monica Lewinsky. And this is the group that begins to understand social media, where social media takes off in ways that no one saw coming. Some of the characteristics and the values of the millennial generation, and again, these are all generalities. We're just kind of giving you a wide paintbrush stroke here. This is a generation that is conditioned to live in the moment. And based upon the way that they were parented and based upon the way in which that they see the world, that makes a lot of sense. Immediacy is everything to the millennials. They want clear and consistent expectations, much like Gen Xers, a couple of generations previous to them. They focus on spending rather than saving. They are an astoundingly diverse generation, okay? An astoundingly diverse generation, because they have seen the world globally come together in ways no one else in their previous generations got to see because of travel and technology and communication. Speaking of technology, this generation swims in technology. They are fluent with it in a lot of ways because in a lot of ways they created it. They live significantly busy lives, and for the first time, really, generationally, corporate social responsibility is huge to the majority of their generation. how businesses engage the communities around them are as important as the money that they make. Now let's move into the iGen generation. This is Generation Z, a group that is entering the workforce and has been in the workforce for a while. They've experienced things like the Great Recession. Okay, they experienced the first black president in Barack Obama. They see terrorism with regularity, mass shootings across the nation, whether it's schools or in public places or in churches. This is a part of their everyday news cycle, things they have been hearing about since they were children. They've only known, in a lot of ways, political polarization. They've seen significant Supreme Court decisions impact the world that they've been growing up in, like same-sex marriage. Sexual orientation and gender identity are normalized conversations in this generation. These are not new things to them. They don't understand in a lot of ways why it makes other generations, especially previous generations, uncomfortable. This is part of what they do. It's part of what they've seen. It's part of what they've experienced. And here are a few of the characteristics and the values that kind of define this group. They're diverse. Over and over and over, let me say, they are extremely diverse. They are digital natives. Now, I talked about the group before them, the millennials, being a group that swims in technology. Well, Gen Z they're digital natives. Like, they only know a world where they use technology all the time. That is part of what they do. But interestingly enough, they are extremely hard working. Now, I know a lot of times we make jokes about this, and I'll talk about this in a second, when we talk about younger generations being snowflakes and no work ethic and this and that and whatever else. They are very hardworking. In fact, those who kind of come on the end of the millennials and those who are in Gen Z are often teased and made fun of because they still live at home with their parents, but they're looking at the economy around them and they're saying, I'm going to go work really, really hard. I'm just going to live at home so I can save money and get out of the debt because they don't want to live with $100,000 worth of student loans. They are entrepreneurial in many, many ways. They are building so many of the businesses that we see around us. They are actually fiscally conservative, which again goes back to why many of them would rather live at home with their parents and pay off student debt in order to set themselves up for a life out of debt. They are equality minded in a ton of ways, and they are socially conscious to the bone. They want diversity, equity, and inclusion in many, many ways. They want to see it at every level of the businesses that they work in. And it's part of the reason we need to be having these conversations, because if we're going to survive as a great business, which I think we are, if we're going to have great companies, which I think we do, we got to understand how the next generations are being impacted and how the next generations are seeing the world, and to be able to work together towards the best of purposes. With all of these different expectations, with all of these different perspectives, with all of these world events that are shaping us and shaping the people around us, what do we do? How can we create environments of inclusivity, whether it's on our property or in our offices, on our teams and our departments, or even in the services and the products that we share? The first thing, and I hinted at this earlier, we have to challenge harmful and divisive stereotypes. Being an older employee does not mean that you don't know anything about technology or that you can't succeed with the ever-changing technology that we have in today's world. Just like being a younger employee doesn't make you a snowflake. It doesn't mean you have bad work ethic. These stereotypes don't do anything except hurt the cultures of appreciation and knowledge sharing that we're working for. The second thing is this, and it's one that each of us has to own: respectful communication. Respectful communication. But note, communication is more than just speaking. It is speaking and listening, and not just speaking and listening to respond. It is speaking and listening well to receive and to understand. Both of these are pivotal for these healthy, multi-generational workplaces that we desire, because we don't all communicate the same. We don't all communicate in the same ways, and we don't all prioritize the same things and in the same order. And that's okay. In fact, it's good that there's that diversity. It's good that there's a little bit of conflict in how we see things, because it pushes us to be better for each other and for those that we take care of. The third thing is that we have to assume that The other person's worldview, the one from a different generation, is needed for our overall success. If our businesses and our products are going to appeal to multiple generations, then we need coworkers from those generations giving us insights. We need coworkers from those generations telling us about how they see the world so that we can better serve and provide and create solutions. The fourth thing is we got to respect boundaries and the differences beyond the workplace initiatives. Each generation, like I said at the very beginning, each generation has been formed, for good or bad, by the world that they've grown up in. And there are non-negotiables in the workplace. We will not negotiate on racism and sexism and destructive behaviors that hurt others. Okay? That is not okay. But there are an awful lot of personal differences and differing worldviews that we need. And so respecting those boundaries and respecting the fact that somebody doesn't think like you and they may have a different value in a certain area than you do. But that doesn't mean we can't find success and camaraderie in a place where each of us is engaged, satisfied, and able to do our best work. The last thing, and all of these kind of work together, but the last thing is we just have to learn from each other. And I think part of learning from one another is assuming positive intent. The beauty in the diversity of perspectives, in the sharing of knowledge and experience, this comes from the fact that we are from different genders, from different races, with different ethnicities, different ages, and anything else. These worldviews and experiences of other generations are not threats to us. They're not a threat to us if we're humble and willing to learn. That humility is the foundation of wisdom. So whether you're a boomer or you're a Gen Zer or anybody in between, that's the foundation for all of us, that humility to learn, to listen, and to join in the workforce together. Now, that's a lot. I know I gave you a lot of information. I know I kind of gave you a lot of education, a little bit of when it comes to dates and different characteristics and different things like that. But again, remember, in the Madera Companies right now, we have an age span of two people who are 75 all the way down to somebody who is 17. There's a beauty in that. There's a goodness in having that amount of diversity and age working together. Hope you guys have a great week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this. And go learn the story of somebody who is not from your generation. It'll be good for you. Have a good one.